This is the story about two American soldiers who go on a mission to Africa. Soon, the mission goes haywire and they are forced to retreat. However, this happened as they walked through the desert.
Sign has been blowing around the desert for God knows how long. Who knows? Maybe.
One soldier is down, and the other has just discovered that he stepped on a mine and must wait 57 hours before the rescue team arrives. Welcome back to Favorite Recap. Enjoy the story. The story begins as we see a U.S. Marine, Mike, embracing his girlfriend, Jenny, as they say their final goodbyes. He has been deployed, and he is leaving for a special mission in North Africa. The parting is hard for both of them, but they must let go, knowing duty calls. Just before he leaves, Mike reassures Jenny that he'll return to her. The scenes then cut to 3 months later, with Mike and his spotter, Tommy, finding themselves deep in the North African desert. They've been lying in wait on top of a cliff, scanning the horizon for their target. As the hot desert air blows heavily on them, they continue to anticipate the arrival of the person they've been assigned to assassinate. Finally, after hours of waiting, they spot two groups approaching from a distance. One group is walking on foot, while the other arrives in a convoy of armed vehicles. When the two groups meet in the middle, Mike observes that the meeting looks more like a reunion of families. When Tommy urges Mike to take the shot, he could also hear their commanding officer on the radio, ordering him to eliminate the target immediately. However, Mike hesitates as he senses that something isn't right. So instead of shooting, he watches closer. That was when it dawned on him that it was a wedding and not a business transaction. And their target is the father of the groom. So, Mike relays this information to his commanding officer. However, the order remains the same. Eliminate the target immediately. Seeing it as the wrong call, Mike refuses to shoot an innocent civilian and lies to his commanding officer, claiming he lost sight of the target. As soon as he makes the call, a glare from his sniper scope reflects the sunlight, and this immediately exposes their position to the guards. And a violent gunfire erupts as the guards fire in their direction. Now under fire, Mike and Tommy are forced to return fire as they retreat. They dash down the rocky hillside, narrowly avoiding bullets, as the guards rush to protect the groom's father. Some guards break off and begin to pursue Mike and Tommy in vehicles. Realizing they won't be able to outrun them, the two Marines dive down the hill, rolling behind a rocky formation to take cover. Tommy frantically tries to call for extraction, but his GPS is broken, so he can't relay their exact location. Meanwhile, the enemy vehicles are closing in fast, so Mike fires at the hill in the distance, hoping this will divert their attention. His attempts work, and the guards head in the wrong direction. At about that time, a massive sandstorm begins to form on the horizon, causing the guards to finally retreat. Mike and Tommy decide to use the sandstorm as cover to make their escape. Through the sandstorm, Tommy manages to contact their commanding officer, who directs them to a village 5 hours west where they can be picked up. After trudging through the storm, Mike and Tommy emerge into the blinding desert sun. As they continue their journey, Tommy tries to keep the mood light, talking about his wife and son back home. But Mike remains silent, lost in his thoughts. Tommy, sensing that something is bothering Mike, asks about Jenny and whether Mike is thinking of marrying her. Mike admits he wants to, but things are complicated right now. Their conversation is interrupted by a message on the radio. The extraction point has been moved due to complications with the main team, meaning Mike and Tommy will have to cross more desert dunes to reach it. To make matters worse, the radio signal is patchy, so they'll have to be extra cautious as they proceed. While walking, they encounter another sandstorm. As they take cover, they spot a man leading a child through the storm, tied together by a rope. The duo doesn't seem to notice Mike and Tommy, and they pass by without incident. Once the storm clears, the two Marines continue their trek. A warning sign blows toward them, landing at Mike's feet. Though Mike can't read the sign, he recognizes the skull symbol, indicating danger. He recalls that the area was once littered with landmines by the U.S. military. Tommy dismisses Mike's concern, insisting it's just a scare tactic used by locals to keep outsiders away from their villages. Despite Mike's apprehension, they have no choice but to press on, as turning back means certain death from dehydration. Hours pass as they walk, and suddenly Mike steps on something. He freezes only for them to discover that it's just a toy soldier. Relieved, he tucks it into his vest. As they walk further, Tommy runs out of water, so Mike shares his own. Tommy then tries to keep things light by teasing Mike for being too serious, even walking backward to make Mike laugh. Suddenly, there's a sharp click. Mike tries to warn Tommy, but it's too late. A landmine explodes beneath him. Mike is thrown back by the blast, his ears ringing. As he looks up to see Tommy has survived but has lost both of his legs. Tommy is in excruciating pain, and he screams for help. Mike tells him to stay calm, and he explains his own situation. He is standing on a landmine himself and can't move without an explosion. Tommy desperately tries to reach for his radio, but he struggles to focus through the pain. Mike tries to comfort him, reminding him of his family. Tommy injects himself with morphine, taking both doses even though Mike tells him to save one. Eventually, Tommy retrieves his radio, but it's broken. Mike considers stepping off the mine, hoping it's an old and inactive one, but the risk is too high. Tommy, wanting to spare Mike, takes out his gun and asks Mike to send his love to his family before taking his own life. Mike is devastated but knows he can't lose control. He carefully lowers himself to one knee and uses his knife to dig around the mine. Sure enough, there's metal under his foot. He's stuck. He then uses his shoelaces and rifle strap to fashion a makeshift hook, trying to retrieve Tommy's radio bag. After several attempts, he manages to drag it toward him, only to discover the radio's battery is dead. Mike uses the solar panel to recharge the radio and eventually makes contact with his commanding officer, who isn't sympathetic to Mike's situation. The officer tells him there's a convoy coming in 52 hours to pick him up, but Mike has to wait. As Mike endures the heat and thirst, another sandstorm rolls in. After barely surviving it, he notices that Tommy's body has been blown closer to him. With great sorrow, Mike covers Tommy's face with his hat and finds a picture of Tommy's family in his vest pocket. Moments later, a Berber man approaches, mocking Mike for not moving, and eventually leaves without offering help. Hours pass, and a young girl arrives, giving Mike water and indicating that he needs to move on. Mike is left waiting once more, thirsty and alone, with only the desert stretching endlessly before him. As the sun begins to set, Mike is still alone in the desert, staring at the horizon. He takes out his phone and begins to play music to distract himself from the long wait and the howls of distant animals. His mind drifts to Jenny, his girlfriend, and he scrolls through pictures of her, eventually watching a video she made for him before he left for his mission. A good luck charm for tough times like these. Despite the warmth of her smile in the video, the vast emptiness around him feels colder than ever. Eventually, his fire goes out, and Mike falls asleep while still glancing at his watch. In his sleep, he dreams of his father, a figure from his past who often haunted his thoughts. Suddenly, his father appears in front of him and punches him hard. Startled, Mike wakes up just in time before he falls. Still shaken by the dream, he tries to restart the fire when he hears growling in the darkness. The sound is too close for comfort. Grabbing his rifle, he fires blindly into the night, but his bullets don't seem to hit anything. Desperate, he risks turning on his flashlight. The beam of light reveals one of the wild dogs dragging away Tommy's body. Another dog is already stalking toward him. Quickly switching weapons, Mike fires again and manages to hit one of the dogs. As it retreats, it steps on a landmine, and the explosion scares the rest of the pack away. The next morning, the Berber man returns. He calls Mike lucky for surviving so far. The man walks with an air of mystery, moving in a zigzag pattern across the sand, claiming that it helps him avoid the landmines scattered throughout the desert. He tells Mike that his real problem isn't just physical. He is stuck emotionally and can't move forward. When asked why he became a soldier, Mike admits that he felt he had no reason to stay behind. The Berber offers Mike some advice. Be a free man, let go of his burdens, and live. Before leaving, the man hands Mike the radio. Mike quickly changes the battery, but it still doesn't work. The Berber touches Mike's face, and for a moment Mike hallucinates, seeing the man as Tommy, urging him to survive. A few hours pass, and the heat becomes unbearable. Mike cuts his boot to relieve the swelling in his foot and kills a scorpion that crawls too close. The hallucinations intensify. At one point, Mike sees Tommy's body standing up, as if they're finally going home. But the vision fades just as quickly as it appeared. In the evening, as Mike continues to try contacting the base, Tommy's hallucination warns him he's wasting the radio's battery. Then Mike's phone rings, and he sees it's a call from his father. Tommy has to remind him it's just another hallucination. Mike, overwhelmed, finally snaps and pushes Tommy's image away. Tommy tells him that all this is happening because Mike never dealt with his inner demons, particularly the trauma caused by his abusive father. Mike admits that leaving Jenny made him feel like he was as bad as his father. But Tommy reassures him that he isn't like the man who hurt him. A flashback shows the moment when Mike proposed to Jenny. She turned him down, not because she didn't love him, but because she believed he needed to heal from his past before they could have a future together. In the present, Mike nearly drifts off to sleep again, but the wild dogs return. They set off a landmine, causing another explosion, but this time they don't retreat. As the dogs close in, Mike fires into the darkness. One of the animals bites his arm, and in desperation, Tommy's hallucination convinces him to try the trench technique their commanding officer had mentioned. Mike digs frantically, but the dogs push him before he can finish. The dogs continued to attack him. However, determined to survive, he grabs his knife and kills them one by one, enduring several bite wounds in the process. Throughout the fight, he recalls the times he was in training back in the States. By morning, Mike had successfully killed all the dogs, and though battered, he is still alive. At that moment, the radio finally works. Mike learns that the convoy has been delayed due to an attack, and he won't be rescued for another 17 hours. Exhausted and barely hanging on, Mike is connected to Jenny. He immediately begins apologizing for all the things he's ruined in her life, for destroying everything he touches. The call cuts off before Jenny can reply, and Mike passes out, caught just in time by the Berber as he falls. He tends to Mike's wounds, applying ointment and giving him medicine to ease the pain. He then shares a story of how a landmine took his leg and killed his daughter. He had been terrified, but a nurse helped him find the strength to keep going. She later became his wife. Mike, thinking about the little girl he had seen before, asks about her. The Berber reveals that he brought Mike the flask of water, not his daughter, who had died gathering landmines. Before leaving, the Berber encourages Mike to free himself from his past. Alone again, Mike's hallucinations grow worse. He watches the walls of his childhood home rise from the sand and sees himself as a child, witnessing his father's violent outbursts against his mother. The memory of leaving his mother with his father, resulting in her hospitalization, haunts him. He also recalls a bar fight where he defended Jenny from two men who were harassing her. The hallucinations blur together, and Mike's father reappears, urging him to give in to the darkness. But Mike remembers Jenny. He remembers proposing to her, their moments together, and how much he wants to be better for her. Finally drawn out of the hallucination by Tommy, Mike sees the convoy approaching. Then a voice on the radio calls out for Mike, but his throat is too dry to speak. He waves his hand, but he's too far away to be seen. Tommy then reminds him about the smoke grenade. Just as Mike reaches for it, an enemy hidden in the dunes shoots him. As he thinks about his promise to Jenny, he becomes motivated to continue as he bends down and grabs the smoke grenade. But before he can use it, a mine explodes behind him, forcing him to drop it. As memories of arguments with Jenny and his leaving flood his mind, he fires back, taking down as many enemies as he can until he runs out of bullets. Then, his father appears in front of him, and Mike remembers his mother telling him to let go of the past. Confused about the happening around him, he points his gun at his father. Surprisingly, his father encourages him to shoot. However, Mike thinks of Jenny and how he asked her out after a fight at the bar. Wanting to be a better person for her, he decides not to pull the trigger. Then, coming forward, his father hugs him, and Mike remembers a hug from Jenny, which helps him to finally let go. Snapping back to reality, he knows that the convoy won't wait much longer, and the grenade is still out of reach. Then, Mike remembers the Berber's advice, and he carefully tries to step away from the mine. However, nothing happens. Surprised by this, he digs it into the soil, only to find that it was just a can, left there by the little girl. Inside, Mike finds a toy soldier. Relieved, Mike laughs and finally retrieves the smoke grenade, activating it just in time for the convoy to find and rescue him. As the story ends, we see Mike return to the US, healed and fully ready to start a better life with Jenny. If you enjoyed this recap, be sure to check out other videos on the channel page. Thanks for watching.